Welcome back to our channel, where we bring you the most compelling and explosive updates from the world of daytime drama. Today is a phenomenal day to explore a storyline that is completely shattering the boundaries of corporate rivalry and familial loyalty. Let us dive straight into the breathtaking chaos that is currently unfolding in Los Angeles. The glittering world of Forrester Creations has always been a battlefield, a place where silk and satin mask the sharpest of daggers. For decades, the rivalry between the Forrester and Logan families has been defined by boardroom maneuvering, stolen designs, and bitter romantic entanglements. However, the current landscape has shifted into something far more sinister and unpredictable. The tension has been steadily mounting, building toward a catastrophic crescendo. Steffi Forrester Finnegan, operating under an intoxicating cloud of executive hubris, has pushed her authority to the absolute limit. She has repeatedly marginalized Hope Logan Spencer, callously pausing the Hope for the Future line to prioritize Eric Forster's couture collections. In doing so, Steffi believed she was simply asserting her dominance, completely underestimating the profound radicalization occurring within Hope. Hope, once the compliant and understanding cornerstone of the company's youthful demographic, has reached her absolute breaking point. The condescension she has endured from Steffi has stripped away her patience, leaving behind a fierce, uncompromising ambition. Guided by the strategic brilliance of Liam Spencer, Hope has been secretly preparing to detonate a corporate bomb, a complete defection to the newly triumphant Logan fashion brand spearheaded by Katie and Bill Spencer. This move would not only cripple Forrester Creations financially, but would serve as the ultimate humiliation for Steffi. The rumors of Hope's departure have begun to circulate, whispering through the corridors of the design house like a toxic vapor. When a reality of Hope's impending exit finally pierces Steffi's armor of arrogance, the resulting psychological fracture is instantaneous and terrifying. In a moment of pure, unadulterated desperation, Steffi realizes that standard corporate tactics will no longer suffice. Carter Walton had explicitly warned her about the devastating consequences of her hubris, prophesying that her actions would lead to ruin. Steffi had ignored him, blinded by her own ego. Now, staring at the impending loss of the company's most lucrative asset to her greatest rivals, Steffi descends into a state of sheer madness. The prospect of Hope aligning with Katie and Bill Spencer is an existential threat to the Forrester legacy. To prevent this, Steffi conceives a plan so reckless, so dangerously unhinged, that it crosses the line from corporate sabotage into outright criminality. She determines that the only way to chain Hope to Forrester Creations is to exploit the one vulnerability that Hope values above her own freedom: her mother, Brooke Logan Forrester. Steffi's machinations begin with a calculated deception, a masterful manipulation of Brooke's enduring desire for family harmony. Knowing that Brooke has been aggressively pushing for a co-CEO position and advocating for Hope's respect, Steffi reaches out with a fabricated olive branch. She contacts Brooke, her voice dripping with feigned exhaustion and a false desire for reconciliation. Steffi proposes a secret, off-the-books meeting to discuss a permanent truce between the warring factions of their blended family. She insists the meeting must take place away from the prying eyes of the Forrester offices and the relentless Los Angeles paparazzi. Brooke, driven by a maternal desperation to secure her daughter's future and a lingering hope to save her own fracturing marriage to Ridge, agrees to the rendezvous, completely unaware that she is walking into a meticulously constructed trap. The location Steffi chooses is a chilling reflection of her dark intentions. It is an old, decaying suburban mansion, a forgotten relic of Los Angeles real estate that has sat abandoned for years. The property is shrouded by overgrown foliage, its grand architecture now suffocated by creeping ivy and the relentless march of time. As Brooke drives through the rusted iron gates, the isolation of the estate becomes immediately apparent. The air is thick with neglect, the silence broken only by the crunch of gravel beneath her tires. Brooke steps out of her car, her designer heels sinking slightly into the untended earth, a sense of deep unease beginning to coil in her stomach. Yet, her commitment to her family pushes her forward, up the crumbling stone steps and through the heavy, groaning front doors. Once inside, the atmosphere is suffocating. The interior of the mansion is swallowed in shadows, the grand windows boarded up, allowing only thin, dusty shafts of light to pierce the gloom. Brooke calls out for Steffi, her voice echoing hollowly against the peeling wallpaper and sheet-covered furniture. The response she receives is not a greeting, but the sharp, terrifying sound of a heavy deadbolt sliding into place behind her. The heavy oak doors are locked from the outside. Brooke spins around, her heart hammering against her ribs as panic begins to set in. From the shadows of the grand staircase, Steffi emerges. However, this is not the polished, authoritative CEO Brooke knows. This is a woman driven to the absolute edge, her eyes wide with a manic, ruthless determination. The confrontation that follows is a masterclass in psychological terror. Brooke demands to know what is happening, her initial confusion rapidly giving way to visceral fear. Steffi, her voice eerily calm, lays out the reality of the situation. She informs Brooke that this is no longer a negotiation about co-CEO titles or design schedules. This is a hostile takeover of their very lives. Steffi coldly explains that she knows about Hope's plan to defect to the Logan brand. She articulates, with chilling precision, how Hope's departure would empower Katie and Bill, fundamentally destroying the Forrester empire. Therefore, Steffi declares, Brooke will not be leaving this mansion. She will remain a prisoner within these decaying walls until her daughter is brought to heel. Brooke is paralyzed by the sheer audacity and criminality of the act, realizing with mounting horror that Steffi has completely lost her grip on reality. While Brooke is plunged into a nightmare of captivity, the second phase of Steffi's draconian plan is set into motion. Miles away, in the gleaming, modern offices of Forrester Creations, Hope is finalizing the details of her resignation. She feels a profound sense of liberation, a thrilling anticipation of joining her Aunt Katie and building a legacy free from Steffi's oppressive shadow. Her phone buzzes on her desk, signaling an incoming message. Expecting a supportive text from Liam or a logistical update from Katie, Hope casually unlocks the screen. What she sees instantly drains the blood from her face and sends a wave of paralyzing nausea crashing through her body. It is a video message from Steffi. The footage is dark, grainy, and deeply disturbing. It shows Brooke sitting in a dusty, dimly lit room, her expression a harrowing mixture of defiance and genuine terror. The camera pans slightly, revealing the heavy locks on the doors and the boarded-up windows. Then, Steffi's voiceover begins, cutting through the silence like a serrated blade. Steffi's tone is devoid of any emotion, a sociopathic calmness that makes the threat all the more horrifying. She addresses Hope directly, stating that Brooke is currently enjoying a mandatory, extended vacation at an undisclosed location. Steffi makes it explicitly clear that Brooke's safety and her eventual release are entirely contingent upon Hope's immediate and unconditional surrender. Accompanying the horrifying video is a digital document, a contract that represents the death of Hope's professional and personal freedom. It is a lifetime exclusive agreement with Forrester Creations for the Hope for the Future line. But the terms of this contract go far beyond standard corporate retention. It is a document forged in malice, a binding legal tether designed to enslave Hope to the company forever. The clauses are draconian, stripping Hope of all creative control, financial leverage, and the ability to ever seek employment elsewhere. More devastatingly, the contract includes a highly specific, ironclad morality clause. Hope must swear, legally and publicly, to never form any alliance, professional or personal, with Katie Logan or Bill Spencer. She must sever all ties with the Logan brand, effectively betraying her family and abandoning the sanctuary Liam had so carefully orchestrated for her. Steffi's ultimatum is absolute and uncompromising. Hope must sign the contract, return it immediately, and publicly announce her lifelong commitment to Forrester Creations. If she hesitates, if she attempts to contact the authorities, or if she breathes a word of this to Ridge or Liam, Steffi promises that Brooke will simply disappear into the forgotten shadows of the suburban mansion. The video ends, leaving Hope staring at the black screen of her phone, her lungs burning as she forgets how to breathe. The vibrant, hopeful future she had envisioned just moments ago has been violently incinerated, replaced by an asphyxiating prison of Steffi's design. The internal conflict that ravages Hope in the aftermath of the video is agonizing to witness. She is standing at the most brutal crossroads of her entire life. On one side lies the career she has bled for, the creative freedom she so desperately craves, and the empowering alliance with her Aunt Katie. It represents her independence, her emergence from the shadow of the Forrester patriarchy. On the other side lies the very life of the woman who gave her everything. Brooke has sacrificed her reputation, her happiness, and often her own sanity to protect Hope. The thought of her mother locked away in a decaying, isolated house, at the mercy of a woman who has clearly lost her mind, is a psychological torture that Hope cannot bear. The choice is not really a choice at all. It is an execution of her dreams. This unprecedented escalation fundamentally alters the DNA of the Forrester and Logan rivalry. For generations, the matriarchs of these families, particularly Stephanie Forrester, engaged in ruthless, often cruel manipulation. Stephanie had faked heart attacks, orchestrated deportations, and manipulated marriages to protect her family's legacy. Yet, even Stephanie, in her darkest moments of animosity toward Brooke, operated within a certain twisted moral framework. Steffi has shattered that framework entirely. By committing felony, kidnapping, and extortion, Steffi has crossed a Rubicon from which there is absolutely no return. She has transformed a fashion industry feud into a chilling criminal enterprise, driven by an obsessive need to maintain control at any human cost. The implications of this terrifying plot ripple outward, threatening to consume every character in its wake. The most profound and tragic ignorance belongs to Ridge Forrester. Historically passive and prone to burying his head in the sand when the women in his life go to war, Ridge is completely oblivious to the monster his daughter has become. He has spent weeks ignoring Carter's dire warnings, frustrated by the bickering between his wife and his daughter, wishing only for peace. When the truth inevitably claws its way into the light, when Ridge discovers that his own flesh and blood has imprisoned the love of his life in a dilapidated mansion to secure a business deal, the psychological devastation will be absolute. It is a revelation that will likely destroy his relationship with Steffi forever and could permanently shatter his marriage to Brooke, pushing him toward the historical safety of Taylor Hayes. Meanwhile, the Logan camp remains blissfully unaware of the nightmare unfolding. Katie and Bill are riding the high of their monumental global success, their billboards illuminating the skies of major cities. Liam is confident in his strategic victory, believing he has successfully navigated Hope out of the toxic Forrester environment. When Hope suddenly reverses course, when she inevitably signs the draconian contract and severs ties with them, the confusion and betrayal they feel will be profound. They will view Hope's actions as a cowardly retreat, a baffling surrender to Steffi's bullying. They will have no idea that Hope is not betraying them out of weakness, but out of a desperate, agonizing necessity to save her mother's life. Hope will be forced to wear the mask of a traitor, alienating the very people who try to save her, all while carrying the crushing secret of Steffi's criminality. As the clock mercilessly ticks down, Hope finds herself entirely isolated in her terror. She cannot call the police without risking Steffi executing her threat against Brooke. She cannot confide in Liam, knowing his impulsive nature might lead him to confront Steffi directly, thereby endangering Brooke further. She is trapped in a labyrinth of Steffi's design, the walls closing in with every passing second. The pen feels like a lead weight in her trembling hand as she stares at the digital contract on her tablet. Every word of the agreement is a nail in the coffin of her independence. She reads the clause demanding she renounce Katie and Bill, feeling a visceral sickness in her stomach. Steffi, sitting in her pristine, sunlit office at Forrester Creations, waits with the cold, predatory patience of a spider. She has convinced herself that this extreme measure is a necessary evil, a righteous act to protect her grandfather's company from the parasitic grasp of the Logans. Her executive arrogance has completely blinded her to the moral depravity of her actions. She does not see herself as a kidnapper or an extortionist. She sees herself as a savior, a monarch doing whatever it takes to secure her throne. She is utterly confident that hope will break, that the Logan loyalty will ultimately be their undoing. In the suffocating darkness of the suburban mansion, Brooke paces the floorboards, her mind racing for a way out. She knows Steffi is dangerous, but she never anticipated this level of unhinged malice. Brooke's thoughts are entirely consumed by hope. She prays that her daughter will find the strength to outsmart Steffi, to see through the madness and find a way to turn the tables. Yet, deep down, Brooke knows the depth of Hope's love. She knows that Hope will sacrifice herself, her career, and her happiness to ensure her mother's safety. The tragedy of their bond is that it is the very weapon Steffi is using to destroy them both. The stage is now set for the most explosive and emotionally devastating confrontation in the history of Los Angeles. Hope Logan Spencer is standing on the precipice of a decision that will alter the trajectory of her life forever. Will she sign her soul away to a woman who has become a literal monster, binding herself to Forrester Creations in a lifetime of indentured servitude? Or will she find a hidden reserve of cunning, a way to outmaneuver Steffi's psychotic blackmail and rescue her mother before it is too late? The tension is unbearable. The stakes have never been higher, and the fallout from this catastrophic day will leave the Forrester and Logan families forever changed, their legacies stained by a darkness that can never be washed away. The glittering epicenter of global fashion, Forrester Creations, has always been a sanctuary of haute couture, a place where beauty is manufactured and dreams are stitched into reality. Yet, beneath the blinding runway lights and the pristine glass corridors, a suffocating darkness has taken root. The recent revelation inside a seemingly innocuous Forrester closet has shattered the illusion of safety, transforming a haven of design into a claustrophobic trap. Melissa Dillon, already navigating a precarious existence within the company, found herself thrust into a waking nightmare. As she stepped into the dimly lit wardrobe, the rustle of silk and satin gave way to a chilling presence. From behind a rack of meticulously crafted dresses emerged a figure that belongs in the darkest corners of a psychological thriller. Remy Price, adorned in a long, unsettling wig, revealed himself not as a ghost, but as a predator who has been patiently lying in wait. This was no accidental encounter. It was a masterclass in calculated terror, a moment designed to strip Dillon of her agency and plunge her into a labyrinth of manipulation. The visual of Remy Price lurking in the shadows, his identity concealed by a grotesque disguise, is a haunting metaphor for his entire existence. He is a man who operates in the periphery, a puppeteer who pulls strings from the dark. When he pulled off the wig, he did not just reveal his face. He unveiled a sprawling, sinister conspiracy that has dictated the trajectory of Melissa Dillon's life. The revelation that Remy is Dillon's cousin is a staggering blow, twisting the knife of betrayal. Blood, which should be a bond of protection, has been weaponized into a chain of servitude. Remy casually, almost cheerfully, confessed to orchestrating the very foundation of Dillon's current life. He was the invisible hand that secured her the art teacher position, the stepping stone that eventually led her through the gilded doors of Forrester Creations. Every success she thought she earned, every moment of stability she fought for, was meticulously engineered by a man who views human beings as chess pieces on his twisted board. For weeks, Dylan has been tormented by mysterious, disguised phone calls, a psychological warfare that left her paralyzed with fear and constantly looking over her shoulder. The revelation that Remy was the voice on the other end of the line reframes these calls entirely. They were not random acts of cruelty or the ravings of a disconnected stalker. They were the calculated check-ins of a warden ensuring his prisoner was still in her cell. Remy was verifying that his asset was perfectly positioned within the walls of Forrester Creations. He needed to know that the seed he planted had blossomed exactly where he needed it to. The sheer audacity of his patience is terrifying. He built a cage around his cousin, a cage made of opportunity and employment, and waited until she was utterly dependent on it before snapping the lock shut. Remy's dialogue in that suffocating closet was a masterclass in gaslighting and predatory manipulation. He spun a tale of remorse, claiming that he deeply regrets the horrific deepfake videos that nearly destroyed Electra Forster's life. He painted himself as a reformed sinner, a man seeking a second chance, a humble air conditioning repairman who now merely wishes to start a legitimate career in the fashion industry. It is a narrative designed to exploit the natural human inclination toward forgiveness. But within the context of his actions, this plea for redemption is nothing more than a grotesque mask. A man seeking genuine forgiveness does not hide in a closet wearing a wig. A man seeking to make amends does not blackmail his own blood relative. The juxtaposition of his current blue-collar job with his sudden, burning desire to enter the exact industry where his former victim is a rising jewelry designer is not a coincidence. It is a glaring, blaring alarm bell. With the chilling, casual confidence of a man who knows he holds all the cards, Remy laid out his demands. This was not a request for a familial favor. It was an extortionate ultimatum. He explicitly told Dylan that she owes him for the life she has built. The art teacher job, the proximity to wealth and power, the escape from the threat of homelessness, all of it came with a hidden price tag, and the bill has just come due. Dylan is now trapped in an ethical and emotional vice. She is desperate to maintain her footing at Forrester, terrified of losing the stability she has fought so hard to achieve, especially after the relentless sabotage she endured at the hands of Ivy Forrester. To refuse Remy is to risk the destruction of her career, the exposure of her secrets, and a return to the streets. To comply is to become an accomplice to a monster, facilitating the destruction of innocent lives. The most chilling aspect of Remy's demand is its specific, surgical precision. He does not want Dylan to vouch for him to Ridge Forrester, Steffi Forrester, or any of the traditional gatekeepers of the company. He wants her to vouch for him to Deke Sharp. This detail is the linchpin of his entire psychological operation, and it is what elevates his scheme from a simple stalker narrative to a saga of profound, calculated evil. Why Deke? Because Deke is not just a man with influence. He is Electra Forster's father. Remy understands the intricate dynamics of power, trust, and familial protection. He knows that if he approaches the Forresters directly, he will be met with impenetrable walls of security and suspicion. But Deke represents a backdoor, a vulnerability disguised as an opportunity. By targeting Deke Sharp, Remy is attempting to hack the emotional mainframe of the Forrester and Sharp families. If Deke, the protective patriarch, is manipulated into believing that Remy has genuinely reformed, if Deke stands up and vouches for this man, the entire defense perimeter collapses. Deke's endorsement would serve as a Trojan horse, granting Remy unprecedented legitimacy. He would no longer be the creepy stalker lurking in the shadows. He would be the redeemed sole champion by the victim's own father. This would grant him the ultimate prize of proximity. It would allow him to walk the same halls, breathe the same air, and exist in the same physical space as Electra Forrester without the immediate threat of being thrown out by security. It is a strategy of breathtaking malice, weaponizing a father's capacity for forgiveness against his own daughter. To understand the true danger of Remy's return, one must look back at the devastation he has already wrought. The deepfake videos were not merely a juvenile prank or a momentary lapse in judgment. They were a calculated act of psychological annihilation. They were designed to humiliate, isolate, and break Electra Forrester. But the deeper horror lay in the physical manifestation of his obsession, the wall of photos in his home, a shrine dedicated to a woman he viewed not as a human being, but as a possession. This was not the behavior of a man who makes mistakes. It was the behavior of a predator claiming his territory. The deepfakes were not the culmination of his obsession. They were merely the